CWPA Remote Professional Edition, where we take a look at water polo players and where they are today.
This man was a member of the Connecticut College Camels men's water polo team. After graduating in 2008 with a double major in anthropology and English, he moved down I-95 to pursue graduate coursework in human skeletal biology at New York University. His career has followed several different paths, and now he is a global salesman and business development consultant at an aviation aerospace company. I'm so very pleased to be joined today by Daniel O'Shea. Daniel, thanks so much for appearing today on CWPA Remote.
Well, thank you so much, George. Really my pleasure to speak with you today.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, and let's start off right from the get-go with your college water polo. How and why did you end up choosing Conn College?
Oh, God. So I ended up choosing Conn. So I had actually started playing water polo in high school, and that was an important determinant for me. I wanted to go to a school that had a program of one type or another, and Conn was particularly attractive because it did have a varsity program. So that was one of the big things that really attracted me to it. But just generally speaking about Connecticut College in general, its academic profile is excellent. Certainly a really really good school that actually puts a lot of faith in its student body. It's bound by every student that attends is bound to an honor code. Conn is one of the few colleges in the nation that has a student-based honor code, and so it imparts a lot of the responsibility on the students to not only moderate themselves, but also to adjudicate themselves as well. So when a student commits some type of misconduct, they are, it is students that figure out the disciplinary measures that are appropriate for that student's misconduct. And as part of that too, Conn also has proctorless exams, it just turned out to be a really, really good fit, both culturally. I really liked the responsibility that they vested in their students. And of course, being able to go to a school like Conn and join the water polo program and play varsity throughout my collegiate career was fantastic. So it ended up being a really great fit.
Well, do you remember your first practice?
Yes, I do. I was a walk-on on the team. I wasn't a recruit. And I remember walking into the first practice, meeting all my teammates and getting introduced to the captains. I had already spoken with the coach at that time, and we hopped in the water, and the first thing that we had to do was like 4 1,000s as our opening warm-up. So I won't, I had swam in high school. I had played varsity all 4 years of high school, but 4 1,000s as the warm-up as part of like a 10,000-yard practice really was a kick in the teeth for the first practice of the day. There was also like an hour of dry lands that followed up the practice, and then another 2-hour practice in the afternoon. So I got my butt kicked that practice. So yes, I very much remember that moment.
Welcome to college water polo. So how about your first game?
Seriously. My first game, I don't have a lot of memories of my first game, to be really, truly honest with you. And but I do remember one of the first games the first game that I got real significant playtime as a freshman. And we were playing against Penn State Barrand. I remember there was one particular guy that was playing the center defender position at Penn State, and he was just super aggressive. Just everybody on my team was like, oh man, that guy's a jerk. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get in there and I'm going to get this guy tossed. I'm going to go in and swim up to him. I'll take the I'll take the 2-meter position, and I'm going to get him thrown out. And what happened, we recorded this game, and what ended up happening was it looked like I swam right up to him on the video and just slugged him in the face. That's not what happened, but that's what it looked like in the video. And so my first game with significant playtime, I was in the water for all of 5 seconds, and it wound up in a double ejection, both of us getting thrown to the corners.
Well, again, welcome to college water polo. How about
Serious?
And how about your first goal?
My first goal was actually later that season. We were playing actually a club team. It was against Williams College. So Connecticut College is part of NESCAC, but we're the only school in NESCAC with a varsity water polo program. So we would play some of the other NESCAC schools that have varsity programs. Wesleyan, we play them all the time, and we played Williams one time, and I just remember going in Williams and just like sinking one right in the top right corner. So it felt really good. I know it was just a club team, and we had scrimmaged. The Coast Guard Academy is right across the street from Connecticut College as well, and we scrimmaged Coast Guard like once a week or so. So I'd score goals versus Coast Guard, and score goals versus in all these kind of scrimmage situations. But like in an actual game setting, it was kind of fun to score that first goal versus Williams.
For sure. So, what is your single best memory of your water polo career at Conn College?
Ooh, there are a lot of really really cool memories. I think one of them was one of my early year moments on the team. We had an alumni game. I forget if it was my sophomore or freshman year, but we had all these recent alums that came back. Actually, a surprising amount for a college alumni game. Were able to come back on like a weeknight to play against us, and the game itself was fun. But getting to hang out with all these different alums, including a bunch of former captains of the team, and just how many people just remembered them, it quickly proved to be like one of my favorite early experiences on the Connecticut College water polo team. And just there were just so many of them, including a bunch of beach water polo that we did in like Long Island Sound during the early parts of our seasons before it got too cold and we had to head inside. And then just the team, we had a really close relationship with the girls team as well. And so there were all sorts of, there were late night pickup sessions that would happen at the pool, where just members of both teams would come down and just play against each other in little scrimmages. And a couple times our coach at the time, JJ Addison, who's now at Brown, he would hop in the water with us and play with us as well. So there were a lot of moments that were just really cool, really interesting ways to connect with alumni, with our counterparts on the girls team, and then to get to better know our coach too, as not only coach but as a really talented player.
Any disappointments along the way?
Well, of course, there were times playing, my first game getting double ejected within 5 seconds. That's a disappointment for sure. But there were other moments as well. I mean, like any other sport you run into, and any other situation where you have a bunch of people to get together, there are always some interpersonal conflicts that pop up every once in a while. But in the broad sense of things, I look back on my time at Connecticut College and my time getting to play the sport that ended up really defining such a large part of my life. And the disappointments for me, like there are always kind of those moments like, could I have done something better in this play? Like I remember there was a game against Brown. They came they came and played us at Conn. And a guy got inside water on me. He was charging towards the goal, and just I let off a bit on his drive and kind of dropped the ball as defender, basically kind of letting him get to the goal and actually score on us without putting as much effort as I should have been. And, I regret that. That was a mistake. And so those little things kind of stick with you. But like overall, I kind of look at it as, I from my time at Conn, I that was kind of like the beginning in a lot of ways of my water polo experience, and it's hard for me to kind of look back at that and say the groundwork really was laid for me to become a better player on the Masters team that I played on when I started coaching at the high school level. It allowed me to kind of bank on and what I learned at Conn and the different techniques and some of the different strategies. I was able to retrofit them to my own team. So for all the little mistakes that can kind of scratch at the back of your memory, ultimately, I feel like the time at Con, it's hard for me to, look back on them as anything but like little moments, as opposed to in like a greater picture of, what was a pretty awesome experience overall.
Well, before we get into your current position in your career, tell us about transitioning from your academic pursuits in anthropology to medical writing.
Yeah, so it's weird because it doesn't seem like it would be really easy to do that. It seems like it's kind of and a lot of my resume, especially whenever I have like an interview for a job or for like for a posting like internally. I always take a look back at my resume and go, how the heck did I get here again? But transitioning from an anthropology degree to working for, what is now Verisk Analytics, then was called Croparity Services Company, or corporation, excuse me, as a medical writer. So I took, there are several paths within anthropology. There's sociocultural anthropology, there's archaeology, and then there's biological anthropology. And I went the biological anthropology route, or the physical anthropology route. And so I studied a lot of human evolution, and I studied a lot about, the human skeleton, and studied forensics, and also did an independent study and an internship in collaboration with the Massachusetts Medical Examiner's Office directly related to forensic anthropology. So when I was looking for jobs in 2008, when I graduated from Connecticut College, one of the jobs that I was looking at Croparity, now Verisk, was this medical writer job. And basically it was taking a look at different medical records for essentially complex insurance claims and helping translate those into something that could be utilized for cost projection analysis. It's rather technical, but like the best way that I can kind of describe it is just when, an insurance company has somebody that's, injured and has been receiving treatment for a very, very long time, and they're preparing to go to settlement. They have to kind of figure out what those long-term, medical needs are for the patient, and they have to set aside money for it. And part of that, they have to have a detailed review of medical records, which is my job, to review those medical records and explain what happened. So with the background that I had in forensics and, human anatomy, it actually was a pretty neat little fit to work in something that was kind of medically adjacent.
Okay, so medical writing and working on insurance claims and things like that leads you to sales. And can you tell us about how you got to the
Eventually.
sales side of things and what the sales positions were up until you got to Iris?
Yeah, so it was a bit of a roundabout route, including a bit of a foray more in depth into forensic science, a brief stint at NYU for graduate school, and then working directly for the medical examiner's office before Verisk Analytics, the initial company that had hired me right out of college, hired me back in the as a medical writer again, and basically. I progressed in that position really quickly, became a manager of a team. And basically what happened was an internal position popped up, and it wasn't for sales. And I didn't get it. It was in the operations department, but I interviewed for it, and I knocked the interview completely out of the park. And the SVP of sales heard about it and heard that I stepped up, raised my hand for this position, and had an awesome interview. And she said, okay, well, let me give this guy a call. And she called me up out of the blue and basically gave me a 30-minute interview on the phone with no preparation whatsoever. I had no idea it was coming. I had no idea it was even an interview. And at the end of the call, she's like, I want you to join my sales team. Okay. Yep. Let's do it. So I started selling the different products at Verisk Analytics, and I did that for about 3.5 years. I moved briefly away from that and took up a position at a company that did payment processing work for small businesses and sold like point of sale hardware. And then, my wife, who works for the federal government, received a transfer We had to move. I had to leave my job, but it ended up being a good choice because I ended up working with Oracle. So I was picked up by Oracle to work in their utilities division, and they put me in kind of a step-up program to fast track me into a sales position because I didn't have any big tech experience at that point. So I kind of took a bit of a step back in title, if not pay and responsibility, but started as a business development consultant and then moved into an inside sales representative position with our energy efficiency division. And it was while I was at Oracle, I actually met my current boss at Iris Automation. And this past summer, she left Oracle to take up her job as the head of sales for Iris, and she asked me to come with her. And so now I serve as an account executive at Iris Automation. I handle our global direct sales to end users, and I also handle the business development side of the house as well. So basically doing full cycle sales and handling every touch point of the conversation from those initial outreach attempts with customers all the way through deal close and account management afterwards.
And tell us, what is Iris? What does it specialize in? What does it do in the marketplace?
Yeah, so Iris Automation is a safety avionics company. And so what we particularly do is we have a computer vision based detect and avoid system for drones. So let me unpack that a little bit. Computer vision, so we have cameras that we mount onto commercial drones that are dedicated to trying to detect other aircraft that could pose a collision risk to the drone. So our hardware and our software basically sits on the drone, detects other planes, and will tell the drone to automatically avoid these other planes. And the idea behind our company is we want to enable commercial businesses that want to build up something to do with drones, whether it's like a utility company wanting to do like power line inspections or a company that wants to do deliveries. We want to enable those businesses to be able to fly beyond the pilot's line of sight. Currently in the United States, you're actually really not allowed to do that. You have to get special permissions from the Federal Aviation Administration to be able to fly outside of the pilot's actual visual line of sight. And so our system is designed to reduce the risk of airborne collision so that a drone could fly beyond visual line of sight and remove that collision risk. It's a really neat company that's really on like the cutting edge of both like artificial intelligence and machine learning and of course computer vision. So it's a really kind of cool place to be. And then of course working with drones is completely new to me before joining Iris, but it's really neat to see all the different entrepreneurs out there that are trying to figure out new use cases for a technology that's really kind of like on the brink of just exploding.
What are the general things that you do on a regular basis?
So it's a lot of Zoom conversations with customers, trying to basically when I'm talking with a customer, I'm trying to really understand, what their use case is, what they're trying to do with their drone system and how that is, impacted by the different regulations that exist out there and depending on which country they're flying within and, really trying to get a good handle on whether what they're doing kind of aligns with our system and if our system is going to be able to integrate properly on the platform that they're utilizing. Some of the more interesting ones that I've heard, wildfire suppression, so utilizing drones to, carry buckets of water to put out fires. Of course, package delivery, medical supplies for COVID testing, and the like. One of the neatest use cases that I heard about that actually just hit the news a little while ago is a golf course that I think was owned by Michael Jordan, of all people. Actually started using drones to deliver beverages to golfers on the course, which is, one of the more interesting ones that I've heard about.
Well, it's certainly a burgeoning and exciting field. I hope we don't get to the point someday when drones are like a swarm of bees in the air and you have to get a cloud cover from all the drones doing stuff. Before we move into talking about, the college water polo and its impact, I have to ask you about the guitars on the wall and all over the place behind you. What's that all about?
What it's about is, in addition to playing water polo, I'm a fairly avid guitar player, and you know, you're kind of proving the point of why they're mounted on the wall. So spending as much time as I do on Zoom, I think it's always more entertaining and more interesting if customers that you're talking to can have an interesting background to look at. So it's part one, it's a sales tactic. Part two, it's kind of just neat to have them mounted on the wall just for the eye candy portion of it. Mm-hmm. And part three is, so I just had a kid in February. I had my
Congratulations.
first child. Thank you. Just before the pandemic hit. And when he was born, I decided that I was going to make a really conscious effort to start playing guitar again to, set a good example for him. And so part of this is just so that he can see the guitars are out and so that he can, can develop some type of interest.
So we've talked about your college water polo career and we've talked about your business career. We'd all be interested to know, how has your college water polo career impacted your business career?
Yeah, it kind of pops up in weird ways that I wouldn't expect. So it's impacted me, so it's impacted me in a really direct way, which was, I already mentioned I graduated in 2008. I was lucky enough at the height of the recession to land a job before I graduated. I wasn't so lucky in 2010 when I got out of graduate school. And so one of the things that I ended up banking on was I actually started coaching. And I was able to start coaching at Phillips Academy at the high school level. And I ended up coaching there for 7 years. And that was a tremendous experience working with some absolutely brilliant kids that, and getting a chance to, play to be part of the game again from the coach's perspective was absolutely wonderful. But what it opened me up to was, as I was interacting with the kids and realizing, hey, I'm teaching them all these skills. I should know how to do these. I should probably join a club team myself. So I ended up joining the Boston Wet Sox, which is a master's team based just outside of Boston in Newton, Massachusetts. And on top of that too, it led me to getting my referee credentials through USA Water Polo. So it ended up being a really, really awesome, just kind of experience overall. And so during those 7 years that I was there too, it also provided me with a bit of flexibility. It allowed me to pursue forensics and, of course, life and civil service as a public servant, especially in the field of forensic science, does not pay. So it supported me throughout, while trying to explore that career path. And as I moved through and moved into sales, it kind of gave me a grounding, gave me an opportunity to focus on something that wasn't just the job all the time. So it provided me with a really kind of good escape and, getting and kind of injected a little bit of life and like vivaciousness back into my psychology, because just getting to interact with these young people who are, really just out there having a lot of fun. It rubs off on you and makes you feel better too. So in that sense, it had a really direct impact on my career. And where it kind of pops up in interesting ways is, it's kind of the things that I learned as a water polo player still managed to infect my personality in a way, really have influenced the way that I approach different aspects of my job even now. So like, I'll give you an example. I mentioned I had previously been in a management position at Verisk. And I found myself in different leadership roles, like officially and unofficially in different job capacities throughout my career. And one of the things that I kind of took away is a philosophy on leadership that drew out of directly one experience. When I was a freshman, we were playing think it was Washington and Jefferson College. And Con, for all the good things I can say about Connecticut College and its water polo program, we were not a very good team. We lost a lot of our matches, and for some reason, we were winning this game against Washington and Jefferson. We were up by a lot, and it was the fourth quarter. And my coach at the time was like, "Hey, Dan, why don't you go in and play? Get a few minutes under your belt and go for it." And it was towards the end of the season. I had not scored my first goal yet, and the captain of our teams, we were all on the bench. It was a timeout, and our captain was like, "You know what, Dan? We're going to help you get a goal." And so they were. When we got back in, they were setting all sorts of illegal picks, all sorts of holds, and I was surprised that nobody got kicked out, and that we didn't commit any offensive fouls, but somehow we didn't, and I was able to get 3 or 4 good shots off on goal. None of them went in because obviously this isn't the story of my first goal, but
Yeah.
I took that away as a really important leadership trait. And my captain at the time, his name was Dylan Matzinger, and incredible guy that I'm really happy that I got to meet, and I got to play with his brother for a couple of years after. Awesome guy all the way around. So if he's listening to this, props, Dylan. I still remember you for this moment. But I took it away as, if you're in a leadership position, it's important to remember that, leadership is about, leading the charge, and there are all sorts of different ways that you can kind of envision how leadership should work. But one of the key takeaways that I had is that leaders are supposed to create a structure for the people that work under them to succeed. And they are there to make sure. They're not there to do the actual work. It wasn't Dylan's job to score the goal for me, but he took it upon himself and to lead the team to try to reduce the obstacles to give me the best chance of success. And whenever I found myself in a leadership position or interviewing for a leadership role at a company, I've kind of taken that to heart, and it's kind of like, I try to work that into my own management style, which is, it is my job to make sure that the resources are there, that the questions get answered. I may not be able to do everything for my employees, nor do I expect to be able to, but it is my job to make sure that they feel like they're being listened to, and so that when they do their job, they feel like there are just as few obstacles in the way, and so that they can succeed. And I've found that when I'm successful in creating those environments, people work harder, they're happy to work for you, and then you can really kind of pinpoint the ones that are ready to take a step beyond and either take on a leadership role themselves or take on new tasks that give them a chance to shine. So it's one of those philosophies that's kind of stuck with me, and it was in that moment that it kind of crystallized in my mind. That's one of the things a leader should really try to do for the people that they're trying to lead.
Very definitely. So many times interviewers are going to ask people your age, older, to answer the question of, what would you tell your younger self? But I like to approach it the exact opposite way. I'd like to know what you think college Daniel O'Shea would say to Daniel O'Shea today.
You need to start swimming more, first of all. But no, I think college me would be surprised, and in some ways, I hope that I would be satisfied with myself for the decisions I've made. So, like in my time after college, and in a lot of ways, I kind of alluded to this with my coaching experience. I was able to take some risks with my career in a way that, if I didn't have Phillips, maybe I wouldn't have. I was able to do things like, explore working in forensics as a public servant. I was able to do archaeological projects in Europe as a result of, having that income. So during the off seasons, I could go and do work somewhere else and, be part of field schools and apply myself in really interesting ways. And then, as I developed a more, like, I guess, normal style of career, it gave me the chance to say, okay, I want to move in this position and I want to give it a try, because I knew that there was always, some income, and that I always had kind of that little buffer to make sure that, that gave me that opportunity. So when my wife, transferred jobs, we were still at least close enough to Phillips that I could still work there, and still coach, and that allowed us that made that decision possible. So in a lot of ways, I look back on it, and I think college me would be happy that I was able to kind of explore these different things and really try to find, a career and a job fit. When I was in college, I had no desire to be in a sales role. But now where I am, it feels very right to be in a sales role, to be, interfacing with customers, and to be helping solve some challenging problems that are affecting their business cases. And I had not anticipated that it would have gone that way, but if I didn't have the journey that I went through, I wouldn't have been able to get here. So hopefully college me looks at that and realizes that, that's to my benefit. And, I think college me would be happy too that I still play.
Well, lastly, we do have high schools and their parents watching this. They're looking at college programs, and we do have current college players that are looking at careers after graduating. What
Mhm.
advice would you give to them about college water polo and the role it should take in their decision making?
College water polo was a big role in my decision making, and I'm really glad that it was, because one of the things that I really took away from it, and it's funny too, because it seems to pop up in whenever I've had a job interview too, and it's the idea that as a college player on a varsity program, you're in a very structured life. You have to really manage your time very, very well, and you have to basically balance your social life, your academic life, and your obligations to the team. Those are all things that you have to be managing simultaneously, and on top of that, you have to try to maintain that competitive edge all throughout it. So like even when you're in the off season, you've got to be preparing yourself mentally and physically to be able to succeed in the next season when it comes up. And so I found that having that structure. I was a 3-season athlete in high school, moving to college, taking on the obligations of a varsity player in college, felt really much more normal. It was much more aligned with the lifestyle that I had already been accustomed to, but it provided me with a bit of structure. In a really important way. It kind of forced me to discipline myself. And, when I've applied for jobs in the period since then, it comes up all the time. Oh, you played varsity sports in college. Oh, that's excellent. So you must be competitive. And I know that you're not afraid to work in a high stress situation, which pops up over and over again. So, to anybody that, might be considering, playing varsity, I would say, consider it. It's not for everybody. It's, different people have different motivations in their lives, but, I would say it's always worth exploring. If, varsity doesn't make sense, there's always club, which is, far less restrictive, but, stay involved with the sport. I think having the exercise helps clear your head, helps you kind of escape for a little bit, and, be able to kind of put things in perspective. So I would say, absolutely consider it. And if it's right for you, if it feels like you're a good match with the coach and the culture of the team, and that you're willing to to take on the responsibilities associated with it, go for it. I could not. I think the impact of varsity water polo on my life has been enormous. It's affected my career directly, and it's affected my philosophy directly. And I think for, in very, very positive ways. So I'm very pleased with that, that I did get to play, that I still get to play, and that I'm still involved in the community. So, I don't think I would have had that if I didn't play varsity in college.
Well, that's great advice. He followed up his career as a college varsity water polo player at College to become, at first, a successful medical writer and then ultimately a global salesman and business development consultant in the aviation aerospace industry. Daniel O'Shea has been my guest today on CWPA Remote. Daniel, thanks so much for giving your perspective on all things college water polo related to careers.
Thanks, George. This was fun. Really appreciate it.
Until next time on CWPA Remote, this is George Gross Jr. wishing all of our viewers the very best in and out of the water.